Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to SaraSessions, sessions that are about conversations that soothe the heart, feed the soul, and help us find a little more light within ourselves and within this world. Today, I have the privilege of talking to Sylvie Lahaie. Sylvie Lahaie is a yoga instructor. That's how I met her first. And she's also a breath worker. So she gives breathworking classes and workshops to explain how it all works and some of the science behind it. I also had the privilege of participating in one of her neurofeedback meditations, one of the first ones that she actually offered, which I think now is so much bigger than what it was. And I'm so happy for her. So hi, Sylvie. How you doing?
Good, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
It's so exciting to have you here, especially on this beautiful rainy day.
Yeah.
We need the rains, a little bit of abundance out there, a little bit of freshness. I
Yeah.
guess.
Freshness. Yeah. Nice way to be cozy at the end of the day for us.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to have you on because I know your brain is just super phenomenal and you've done some fantastic things, and I'm really excited to pick your brain on things. Now, in this day and age, I think there's been a lot of shifts and changes and transitions for everybody, not only energetically, but also just in the world. So we're going to be talking a little bit about transitions and change and how we deal with that. But before we get there, I'd like you to give us a little bit of your version of who Sylvie Lahaie is and what you do.
Oh, that is a good question. So I think the best way I can go about this is to share a little story about myself and what was a big turning point for me to start learning about the brain in this way. This way being learning about stress management, learning about ways to rewire limiting thoughts, beliefs, change behaviors, all that kind of stuff. So, as Sarah has mentioned, I absolutely love the brain, geek out about the brain, and I have for a long time. So, I did my undergrad in neuroscience, and then I did my master's in neuroscience, where I showed some pretty concerning behaviors at that time. It wasn't, to be fair, and if I were to tell you my whole story, there would be no podcast, but these behaviors, there were signs from childhood, there were signs from adolescence that it was going down this way. But in my master's was basically burnout city. So I was really fortunate that my project looked like there was going to be something interesting. And a master's is a very short period of time in science, biology, the brain, incredibly unpredictable. And so in my mind, I was like, well, I need to do everything in my power for this paper to be published. I didn't know at the time I was doing it because I thought it meant that I would finally feel smart. That comes a little bit later. But what that meant was I was working 14 to 20-hour days, sleeping a couple hours every night, drinking lots and lots of coffee, like Red Bull. I'm thinking I probably went through 3 French presses like a day, like a full pot to myself. And I was,
That's a lot of coffee.
yeah, and smoking cigarettes at the time, right? So always kind of like constant stimulation, basically overriding a lot of my biological needs, and eventually led to burnout. And burnout for me, what it looked like was I wasn't able to function. So I wasn't able to feed myself, wasn't able to clean my apartment, wasn't able to sleep. And it did lead me to the psychiatrist's office, where I got a diagnosis at the time of bipolar type 2. And so bipolar is characterized by having these really depressive episodes and these really manic episodes where in the type 1 variation, it's more impulsive, super hyperactive, very almost superhero kind of energy. And people who experience it, like myself, but the type 2 is a bit of a damper version of that. It's not as high of a high. You do kind of love it because you can do quite a bit. Yeah. Sarah's nodding and smiling.
Yeah, I might have some of those tendencies
Right?
myself, indeed, yes.
But when you're in that state for a while, you know that the crash is coming. And so I was put on medication. I mean, I'd been through therapy that entire time. And basically, towards the end of my master's, I was really aware that what I was doing was not working. During my master's, I was like, well, this is just a temporary thing till the paper's published. And then when the paper's published, everything's fine, which, sidebar, that's not how the brain works. If you put a condition on your brain to feel a certain way, once it comes, you don't feel that way. That's definitely how I felt when that paper was published. I felt maybe a bit of relief, but I think I just felt the same level of anxiety that I did throughout the entire time. So all of that to say was, I was aware that something was off and I was willing to do something different. And that's when I started to explore yoga, just like simple yoga videos online, like Yoga with Adrienne, 15 minutes, whatever, right? In my
She's great.
bedroom.
I love it.
An incredible channel. And for the first time, I experienced what it was like to be in a parasympathetic state, in a rest or digest state, where my mind was a bit quieter for a second and my body was able to feel safe. Once I got that feeling, I was like, well, me and my brain, I need to give this to other people yesterday. And so that led me to my yoga teacher training after my master's. And getting into that world with my neuroscience background, I really saw the links between breath work and the brain related to stress, how meditation is basically brain food to help guide your brain to different states, to help you unlock, to help you rewire certain beliefs you may have that are sticky, that just don't seem to change no matter what you do. And I was using these things on myself, so I was sharing this with students. And that led me to doing my PhD in neuroscience because I felt stable enough to go back to the world of academia without having to lose myself. And so now, coming towards the end of my PhD, I have a little less than a year left, starting to write the thesis, doing the last couple of experiments. I've really found what I'm passionate about and what I want to continue to research and teach people, which is what is the true meaning of actual stress regulation when it comes to your brain, but when it comes to your day-to-day life, because we can put anything on a piece of paper and it could just stay there forever collecting dust. Like, we live in the real world, as well as, unlocking the powers of meditation and making it accessible for everyone and helping them direct it to whatever their brain goals may be.
How long did it take you from when you had your burnout in your master's to coming back to yourself through yoga and deciding to go into your doctor's?
Ooh,
Like,
great question.
was that very short? Was that very long? How did you navigate that?
Incredible question. So it would have been, I guess, a year and a half to 2 years. So when I finished my master's, I was working at a coffee shop because I guess you guys figured out that I really enjoyed my coffee at the time. And I was looking for a job, and I got a job in biotech maybe 6 months after my master's. And I did my yoga teacher training around the same time, right? Because I had this corporate job. And actually, the yoga teacher training was gifted by my mom, which was really sweet. Very, very generous of her. And I would say that I was one of those people that after I did my yoga teacher training, I started teaching right away, but it was COVID times. So I was doing a lot of teaching online, like starting my own YouTube channel. Some of the yoga studios or in the area I was in were doing online classes as well.
So you do have a YouTube channel with yoga instruction.
I do.
Oh,
I
fantastic.
do. And you
What?
guys will see in this YouTube channel quite a wide range, because some of it is like my first teaching ever, like baby Sylvie. And I like that you asked how long did I feel, I guess, safe enough to even consider going back to my PhD, because stress does have physical changes on the body. So if you guys do go back and look at some of those older videos, you can see that I look different. Like, I have that classic, like, cortisol face, for lack of a better word, right? Where it's a bit puffy, it's a bit inflamed. And we love that version of Sylvie, but yeah, YouTube, you'll see him there. And I would say probably a year and a half into really diving into the tools, working the tools, especially the biggest thing that changed was having a consistent meditation practice. I didn't have one until I started my yoga teacher training. I was brave enough to be like, I think I want to go back to school. Like, having even been conscious of that question, like coming to the front of your brain and then kind of doing all the steps to consider it of like, okay, so I'm going to not take this great healthcare plan, have this great salary, and I'm going to go back to stipend life to do research, this is really what I want, was around a year and a half, 2 years.
That's a big decision to go back to school while you have stability and comfort and what some people would say a dream job, a dream life, right?
Yeah.
So she does her meditation, she does her yoga, and she's got this great, fantastic job. And what more can you want? And yet you decided to put that aside and go back to school. Why? What drove you to that?
So I can see at the time what drove me to that, but staying at this position now, like 5 years, 4 or 5 years, the answer is slightly different. So at the time, it felt like something was missing. It felt like my learning had plateaued, and that really, really bothered me. And I did my pro-con list, which was relatively equal. Pros of going back to do a PhD in neuroscience, cons of doing, because they're both. But ultimately, what made me decide to go was I felt like I would have had a lot of regret if I didn't try. And it was a bit of a gut instinct, honestly. Um, and then once I was a year into my PhD, I was like, yeah, gut was right. Like I'm happy here. I'm doing it. And coming towards the end, I'm not always as motivated as I once was at the beginning of my PhD, which is completely normal when you've been on the same topic for years. Again, that's just how the brain works, but no regret at all. And I think a big thing that my PhD has gifted me is expertise in one area, yes, but it's all the skills surrounding it that's really gifted me to be able to expand into the work that I love and I'm doing now, which is also another almost leap of faith, another kind of invitation to be comfortable with uncertainty.
And so you're barely finished your doctor's degree and you've thrown yourself into is this part of how the neurofeedback meditations? Yes. So I went and signed up for neurofeedback meditation with you a few months ago during this summer with my cousin, which was here from Czech Republic. And it was her first time doing anything like that. Kind of like what she imagined maybe Joe Dispenza uses and so it was like a real big deal for her to do it here with somebody that she knows and somebody that I trust. So you've taken tell us a little bit more about that, just that whole concept of neurofeedback meditation.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I guess talking a little bit about, like trusting that gut instinct and getting comfortable with uncertainty and kind of reminding your brain and body that even though you don't have everything figured out right now, that you're safe. Because fun fact, we actually never have it all figured out truly. Anything can change at any time. And that's not an invitation to be more stressed, but it's an invitation to be like, okay, well, then I need to find ways to feel safe myself, regardless of external environment. But that's a side tangent. So coming back to neurofeedback, I was following this account called the Neuro Meditation Institute. And I hadn't followed them super closely, but I was like, they have the word neuro, they have the word meditation. Obviously, we have things in common. And an email popped up in my inbox. And for whatever reason, I opened it and it was around using at-home EEG devices to guide your meditation. And so EEGs, for those of you who don't know, they are ways to electrically record your brain activity. So it's usually these little electrodes that are made of metal that have a connection to your scalp. So it's non-invasive. Usually it's like a form of a cap, and it records every single kind of brainwave you have. And so when you combine this with a technique that we call neurofeedback, it uses an app on your phone and you're either listening to an audio or you're watching a video and it's training one brainwave. So let's say we want to increase alpha brainwave, which is associated with relaxation, reflection, a brainwave we love, especially at the back of our brain. Basically, the app on your phone will increase in brightness or audio volume if you successfully increase that brainwave. And if that brainwave dips, then the audio or the video brightness will also decrease. So you get to know in real time what your brain is doing. And so when I read this, I was like, okay, well, I needed to do this yesterday. And it's a really cool story where I was like, hey, I need to do this yesterday, but I can't shell out thousands USD on my PhD stipend. And you need to have your own device, which is also like, 500 USD, 1,000 USD, depending on where you go. And so I was like, well, embracing uncomfortable and uncertainty, I'm just going to ask if I can exchange content or reviews or something to be able to be a part of this group. And I was really fortunate that that's exactly what they did. So the instructor, who's Dr. Jeff Tarrant, said, yes, no problem. If you create content about the training, you can come. You just need to secure a device. And then the company, BrainBit, who creates the hardware device, was like, yes, for sure. We love this idea of blending it with meditation. Give you a device, go for it. And then I started creating this content, and then the software company came in, which is a Canadian company called Divergence Neuro, saying, we love your content, we love what you're doing, and we want to support you whatever direction you take. So literally just sending like a couple emails, I all of a sudden at this point, right, we flash forward a couple months, because I did this February of this year. And now we're in October. I've given group meditations where we have what Sarah described, right? Multiple devices going at once. So we have multiple people meditating on their phones, paying attention to their own brainwaves in the same room. And I've been able to do it one-on-one with people, which has been really fascinating because we really get to become our own scientists and figuring out, okay, what increases this brainwave, what decreases this brainwave, and start linking it to physical sensations in our body. But if I didn't have the flexibility in my PhD, if I also didn't have kind of that scientific critical thinking, that way of presenting scientific information, like a lot of those skills, I don't think I would have been put in those positions.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
so you've started doing these neurofeedback meditations, and you're finishing your program, and you're also doing these one-on-one coachings, but it's not only for neurofeedback. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the one-on-one coachings, yes, is for meditation because these techniques help quite a bit with meditation depth, which I know Sarah got to experience firsthand. You really kind of get into your meditation faster, especially if you're experienced, and there's literature on that.
Just a side note, I wasn't able to get into the alpha state that I wanted to because I had a lot going on my mind, and we had been late, and so it just seemed a little frazzled on my end. But my cousin that was doing it was just flabbergasted on how she was able to recenter and refocus and increase her alpha waves. So it's really quite fascinating. It doesn't hurt. Nothing is hurting you. It's just a cap that you're wearing, and it's connected to the skin, the
Yeah,
scalp. And it was with music. The
yeah,
one that you had was with music, and we were able to choose what kind of music we wanted, what kind of background we wanted. So that was kind of fun and interactive. And the meditation lasts maybe 15, 20 minutes. And afterwards, you get your results by email.
yeah.
And it tells you at what point during that meditation you were able to regulate and come to that calm state of mind, and what points you were not. So that was really interesting as well. And what have you done with that and your coaching?
Yeah. So meditation is definitely one of them, but I mean, there's a lot of uses for this, right? So, I mean, when we think of what we can ask our brain to do, right? Or what we expect our brain to do, or what our brain is responsible for doing. It's essentially almost everything. And so some of the things that neurofeedback has been shown to be great for beyond meditation is stress reduction is a big one. And you can kind of pair that with meditation a bit, creativity, focus. So, I mean, we're in an era of attention being currency, our attention always being split. Emotional regulation, which ties with stress quite a bit, as well as sleep. So there are things you can do to help basically increase the waves that are responsible for sleep right before bed, which has also been really interesting. I've had a few people come to me with that. And what's been wonderful is that a lot of the people that I've started to work with have luckily been in the same city as me. And so what we do is we actually do a brain activity map. So I have a special EEG at home that has multiple points, and the technique or the assessment is called a TheraQ assessment. And so you do a few things. So you like open your eyes, you close your eyes, you open them again, and then you do a cognitive task. And in the points that it's measuring, which is roughly 4, it's measuring every single brainwave that's happening during those activities. And then it takes that data and it cross-references to many different studies that have measured these brainwaves. The studies are usually of different populations. So people with PTSD, people with insomnia, people with ADHD, and it'll compare your results to theirs and put you in kind of like a normal range. So you can see where you're maybe a bit below average, where you may be above average. And then it gives you a few different scores on stress, on emotional regulation, cognition, and sleep. And so one of my favorite things for people that are in the same city is we do that before we decide what neurofeedback protocol we're doing, because then it's like completely personalized to, okay, so this is a brainwave associated with stress regulation, but is that really the brainwave that your brain is struggling with? Or is it something else? And where in your brain is it struggling? Or is it that that brainwave is fine, but there's another one that's crazy, crazy high that's kind of balancing or getting everything out of balance? So that's been my favorite part of that, is how personalized it is and open people have been with how it's going, and recognizing that the brain is just a huge processing center, right? So when we're kind of addressing those brain waves, we're really addressing, for lack of a better word, everything, right? Like everything that's like led you up to this moment, everything that you had to do that day, how your body's feeling. Are you sick? Have you not slept well? What kind of thoughts did you have that day? And I think people have really enjoyed tracking their brain data throughout and seeing, kind of feeling certain things in their body changing and then seeing certain things in their brain changing and being able to link it together. And it really helps. And that's something that Sarah is super good at. Whenever she's giving any kind of tool or giving you any sort of like therapy or practice, she tells you a bit of the why behind it. And that helps build the belief. And the belief is a huge part in tools actually working.
And practicing it. And so how does this relate to the body? Considering that I'm somatic coach and that I'm a massage therapist for the past little bit, how does that relate information to the body so that the body can calm and relax? Because 80% of the information goes from the body to the brain anyways. So how are we going from the brain to the body with what you're doing? I find that just fascinating.
So it's definitely both. I'm so glad you brought this up because, as you clearly said, there's this bidirectional relationship, right? Because your brain has nerves coming all down your spine that's innervating muscles, cells, skin, joints, organs, all of it. And so that's why meditation is super great. And whenever we have kind of sticky thoughts that are causing certain symptoms, that's why I say sometimes dealing with just the thought is not going to work, because your body's telling you something different or it's stuck. And so I'm very selfish, where with the EEG, I get to do both. So basically all of my clients, and everybody's a bit different, which is the best part of it, is they get a unique, what we call neurofeedback protocol that, again, trains a certain brainwave in a certain area. And then they get complementary exercises to help support that. And then we track the brain data as well, if the brain is also changing as a result of adding these physical things along with your neurofeedback. So a really great example that I've done in the past before I had a EEG to practice with, and something that I've given one of my clients, is she's working on increasing alpha in the back of her brain. So when we close our eyes, especially the back of our brain, we expect certain brain waves to increase, to have more power. And in her case, it was actually the opposite. So when she closed her eyes, her alpha was not going up, it was going down. And this is a signal to me that she does not feel safe, right? If the back of your brain is not allowing these slower brain waves to increase, it doesn't feel safe to do so. And it's likely a lot of activity happening in the front of your brain that is almost inhibiting the back. And so her first exercise, because she was very aware of her stress, right? So it wasn't lack of awareness, but it was to write angry letters. And the idea with writing angry letters in a really specific way that I won't get into now, we're getting hand waves over here. Yes, 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 angry letters, is the idea that when we feel stress over and over again, there are chemical changes and receptors on our body that bind onto them and change. And so if you don't find ways to release that stress, your body physically cannot create space for you to feel safe. And we saw it in her brain waves, like her alpha is increasing, which is great. And she even had an osteo appointment. She had a cranial sacral massage. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the practitioner said, I can tell that your body feels different, that your stress is lower, like you're reflexing back completely differently than before. And so that's, like you say, it's a combination of both. They both work together. You can't have one without the other.
I love that you just explained why writing those angry letters are so important and so beneficial to how we process and synthesize information that has not been processed in our bodies. Because a lot of people think, oh, what's the point of me writing for 5 minutes or writing to this person? I'm never going to send it anyways. Or what's the point of me even revisiting it? I shouldn't give my energy to that anymore because it's past, right? But yet it stays in our body and it stays hidden in our tissues, in our joints, in our heart, in our mind. And that back processing of our brain that we don't really pay attention to, but we're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. But the back processing is like, no, you're not.
That's right.
What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you not paying attention to me? And it just kind of builds up. It's like there's cumulative, how do you say that? Cumulative interest. Well, this is cumulative interest in the other way.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
for like the brain, like,
Exactly.
I can't deal with this anymore. Yet you don't realize that the discomfort of the emotion or discomfort of the body part that keeps on holding on or turning or twisting or giving you suffering or pain is actually part of that cycle in the back of your mind that's constantly on.
That's right.
Mhm.
And as you're alluding to, can be subconscious. And that's the part that makes it tricky, is that we're not always aware of what that programming is. And so our body is one way to kind of get clues and ways to release it. And anytime I've been doing a brain scan, if something shows up at the back of the brain, that's what we work on, because that is the hardest place to access it because it's subconscious. We don't need the front to have it fire. And the more it fires, the stronger the circuit is, the less it's going to take for it to get stimulated, right? And that's a big thing we've definitely talked about before, where right now we're in a world where we're all pretty reactive. And a lot of it can be because we're having circuits that are being, we are having circuits that are being activated instantly. And if we have these big reactions to things that are seemingly small, we're not reacting to that. We're reacting to something else. We're reacting to a circuit that we've been building for years and years and years, events from childhood, things that we've taken away from it, what beliefs we've taken away from it. And really what we're making it mean about ourselves is a really big thing, that when we kind of start asking those questions and finding tools to unpack it, release it, deal with it, that's a lot of what the neurofeedback's really great as, kind of like a complement, a brain boost, a way to track how it's going, a way to speed up how it's going. But it definitely, the release, you can't get past the release. You can't deal with anything that you're not ready to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for that segment, because that brings us into my next question of how do we deal with everything that's going on in the world? It just feels like one thing is settled and then the next thing you know, everything else just comes up and blows up in our face. I'm talking about American politics. I'm talking about Canadian politics. I'm talking about genocide. I'm talking about enslavement still Are we 2025 or 1555? I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
what year we are because it just seems like everything is repeating itself and that history just keeps on falling back on its head, not having learned what we had already repeated so many times. How is it that we deal with everything that's going on in the world? Well, we can't really write an angry letter to the world. And then how does that impact how we respond to the people around us,
Yes.
whether in family situations, amongst friends, amongst colleagues, at work, and how we show up at the grocery store lineup or in traffic?
In traffic, I'm so glad you brought that up because things have changed on the roads a lot.
You could tell. I could tell. I'm personally, how I deal with it is I just stopped listening to everything. But still, behind my mind, it's not because I don't see it that I don't know it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the things that I have seen, I cannot unsee. And so that creates this duality inside where you want to have this joy of living an abundant life that you've created versus this sadness, this grief, this anger, this rage, this seclusion that we've allowed ourselves to just veil our reality somehow. I'm not quite sure if I said that right because it just feels like there's always a veil in front of my joy.
Hmm.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one because I know everybody around is just, we're trying to do the best we can with what we have and everything comes in time. And I like all those platitudes. But the reality is, in this day and age, unfortunately, we cannot just, oh, it's okay and let it go because this
Mm-hmm.
is something that comes and connects to our values, our integrity, our belief system, our humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we losing our humanity? How can we be human again? Are we losing our capacity of compassion, empathy, of understanding, of consideration? It doesn't matter if I respect what you think or not. I still have to have that capacity of managing my emotions so that I could talk to you in somewhat of a considerate way. So, yeah, that was a handful.
No, but I mean, it's a lot is happening right now. And I think you illustrated it beautifully. And so, where I'm going to start with this is that
I'm sorry to cut you off, but because I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, yeah, meditation, yeah, whatever. This world is not made for meditation, right? It's going so fast, everything's so quick, the TikToks and the Instagrams and the LinkedIn becoming one of those nowadays. The ads everywhere. You buy an app so you can watch a movie, and all of a sudden there's 5 different ads for different things that you don't need. These young girls that are looking for Sephora gift cards. Like, are we not beautiful as humans? Do we really need all this junk on our faces with chemicals probably affecting our brain too?
for sure.
All
Yeah.
these creams and all these scents and whatnot.
Yep.
And then coming into this world saying, oh no, meditation is enough. A little bit of yoga is enough. Take a bath. But is but is
Yes.
that really what we're talking about here? Because I know people on the other end are thinking, yeah, okay, whatever, neuroscience, meditation, whatever. But how does that come and help us?
Yeah. Yeah. So, what I'm going to say next is in no way making light of what's happening in the world right now. So, I'm not going to say, that I'm politically for or against anything or anything of that nature. But what I will say is that all of it is an invitation to find safety and security within ourselves because we cannot rely on the external world to give it to us right now. And I will dive into that more soon, what that means, what's happening to our brains right now, consuming all these things, and how the more divided we become, the more emotionally reactive we become to everything that is, yes, not pleasant, not something that we're jumping up and down for joy to see, the less powerful we are, the less ourselves we are, the less capacity we have to use our brains, honestly. And I want to touch on that because when I say the path through is stress regulation, people are going to be like, well, that's a nice thing to say.
Yeah.
But if we want to be at our healthiest and our brightest, which is what the world is needing from us right now, the world being the world at large, the world being our families, the world being
The
the person
systems and the institutions that we are in, world being our colleagues,
yeah,
person at the grocery
at the
store.
grocery store. Yeah, that's the world. They all benefit from us feeling safe and secure. And if we rely on other things, and again, people might not be happy about this, if we rely on even things like money, news, praise, and acceptance from our family to feel safe and secure, then there's a hole and an invitation for us to fix. And that's where these tools come into play. But why don't I take a minute to talk a bit about what our brain looks like? Having all this information, what do I actually mean when I say that we don't have all of our brain on board when we're stressed? So we have two different types of stress response in our brain. We have the fast response, and that has chemicals like noradrenaline, norepinephrine. And then we have our slow response, which has the infamous cortisol that I'm sure we all have heard a lot about, but we'll dive into that one in a little bit. Our fast response actually doesn't use a lot of our brain. So it gets turned on at the back of our brain, at our brainstem. So the things like the front of our brain, right, our frontal lobe, our executive functions where we make our decisions, we don't need it for that response to turn on. And so that one, you have special neurons in your brainstem that send a direct connection. So another neuron makes a connection with nerves that go to your spinal cord, that then go out to all of the tissues releasing noradrenaline. So if you ever feel like immediate panic from something, so whether you're in a car accident, right, and you feel that like jolt of adrenaline in your body and you're panicked, but you're somehow also focused, or you see something online and you feel that same panic, that's your fast response going, like your heart's thumping, like that's noradrenaline, your fast response. Doesn't need anything but your brainstem. Your brainstem is like a couple % of your brain's total volume.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what does that say about where we stand in our daily lives with all this buzz?
I think of it like I've seen, and I do think after COVID has gotten worse, strangers being way more reactive to each other than ever before. I was on a podcast somewhat recently, a couple months ago, and it was with Erin, and Erin was describing a woman getting out of her car because I guess the person in front of her cut her off and her like banging on this person's door screaming, right? And I described to her that's a perfect example of the fast response because I have no doubt this woman did not want to do that, right? Like if she had her frontal lobe online, she would have had a second to be like, okay, so this is not safe. This is not productive. This is not going to change the fact this person has cut me off. But that wasn't available to her because she was in an immediate threat. And within seconds, that's the big thing with the fast response, is it happens within seconds. And it's a real like sudden surge of adrenaline. And then your slow response is different. So you're using cortisol and it does involve more areas of your brain. It's called the HPA axis for the geeky friends that want to dig in, which is the hypothalamic pituitary axis. And this happens more kind of like minutes, hours, days, this release. And it's because it's not direct connections, but it's basically releasing a series of hormones. And then eventually through this release, cortisol will release from your adrenals, and then it'll bind to a bunch of different tissues that have the receptors, right? So one that a lot of people don't know about is that our sweat glands have cortisol. And so when you're feeling particularly hot or sweaty, like maybe before giving a presentation, or you notice in a stressful period, your sweat smells a bit different.
Definitely.
That's cortisol. You can thank cortisol for that. So symptoms related to kind of high levels of cortisol is more not immediate, like the fast, but it's almost like low irritability, right? So having restless muscles, having your appetite change, whether usually it's eating more when you have high cortisol. If you're eating less, it's probably high adrenaline. Brain fog is one as well. And a big one is issues sleeping. And that's because cortisol is involved in stress, but it's also involved in other things. It helps us stay alert, for one. And so our brain will naturally have what we call a circadian rhythm, which is just like a 24-hour clock of when this hormone gets released. And people that wake up at kind of 2, 3 a.m., all of a sudden, that's when our cortisol actually naturally rises, and then it'll continue to rise for us to wake up. But if our baseline's really high, it'll actually wake us up too early, and we won't be able to fall back asleep. Even with just all those, you can see what I mean in terms of you don't have access to your full brain, and you don't even have optimal access to your body. So how are you even going to deal with all of these stressors you're being bombarded with if you're not regulating your own stress and making that a priority?
You seclude yourself, like most people. You become hyper individualistic, and your failures and successes are only for you, and it doesn't affect anybody else, or so you think, but it actually affects everything in your life. And in our society, it's very different than in a society like the Japanese or the Asians,
Yes.
where there is more of a community to their well-being, right?
Yeah. And what's interesting, right, with what you just mentioned, and I'm glad you did, around wouldn't the solution be seclusion, right? Like just eliminate all the things that are stressful, and then you don't have to really work on stress regulation.
It's like those things that they send, oh, well, if you can't handle me at my worst, you can't handle me at my best. You cut people off. Or
Yes. Oh my
those
gosh.
people that
Yeah.
say, well, if you don't like it, too bad. This is how I am.
Yeah.
That's completely in a defensive state. That is not in a regulated state that you're saying that.
That brings up something really cool, which ties it in, which is our brain and triggers. And so I'll explain what a trigger is, and then I'll come back to how the seclusion method really doesn't work. As much as if it did, then we would all be happier. But the secluded people are not happy, and this is why. Not to call you out. I've been there. I get
No,
it.
no,
Yeah.
my-
Basically, what we were talking about before, right, is circuits that are strong in your brain, right, which is a collection of neurons that are associated with a thought or associated with an action or a behavior. It's strong through a lot of stimulation, right? So let's say I had a circuit that feels like I could never do enough. Like I could fill my days, do all the things, and at the end of my days still feel like it's never enough. And that's because of things that happened to me in childhood, how I interpreted it, what was said to me, how I felt, whatever. And let's say, I'm with a colleague, and a colleague sort of gives me constructive feedback, and that circuit's fired. Oh, like I can never do enough. I can never do enough, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, well, screw them. I'm just going to maybe go get a new job, or I'm going to go work for myself. I'll be my own boss. And then if I'm my own boss, I will never feel that way. You definitely still do. But basically, by controlling your external environment, is that circuit still strong or not? The answer is yes, because you haven't done anything to change the circuit. You haven't done anything to decrease the stimulation. It is just basically waiting there like a ticking time bomb to be triggered again. And so by trying to control your external environment so you're never triggered doesn't work. And and this is a bit radical, but it's changed my life a lot. If you look at your triggers, like if you look at, okay, so when they said that, they didn't love my font or something, I had a little rage fit, and I go, okay, well, screw them, screw that. Instead, I look, okay, well, why did I feel the need to have that reaction to somebody not liking my font? Like, who cares? Then I actually have an opportunity to change that circuit so that I'm not a match for that anymore, so that people can give me feedback and I don't feel any type of way about it, and I can be objective and I can be more neutral, and I can have my entire brain online to digest the feedback of like, oh, that's a stupid comment, or oh, that's actually really helpful. I'll use that. And so a big part of that is whenever you're triggered, I mean, do what you need to do to regulate yourself, right? Because if your body's in a reactive state, your mind is not on board to help unpack that circuit anyway. So that's again where the somatic practices come in, that Sarah is like an absolute queen about, breath work, meditation. Once you're a bit calmer, the question to ask yourself is, how does this, what this person said or what this person did, how does it make me feel? And how does it make me feel about myself? And then you can really start to unpack that. And when you start having more of your brain online because you're regulating your stress, and then you start uncoupling your triggers, think of how much more brain space you have for life, for all the things you want out of life. And none of that can happen being alone by yourself, controlling your external environment.
Trying to control anything and everything that comes at you, right?
Yep.
And becoming that super controlling freak.
Yeah.
Or obsessive compulsive or whatever, however it is that you manage your stress, right?
And like you mentioned, setting boundaries with people, policing other people's behavior, that's exhausting, right? Like thinking, for example, like I could only feel, again, we talked about it right at the beginning, right? Like placing conditions on yourself. I could only feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile or accepted or that I'm really respected if, so hot take, and this won't offend my mom, but my mom was not a fan of me going back to do a PhD. She's kind of like, well, you have a great job. You're already really smart. Like, why do you do this? And I did it anyway. And I mean, she respects my decision, but there could definitely be a version of me that goes, well, I won't feel respected by my mom if she doesn't agree with my PhD. So I'm just going to block her, not talk to her anymore, not have a relationship with her until she acknowledges that this is a smart move. Well, that's exhausting to have to put up barriers for everyone else so that you can feel okay. Where really the question is, why do I want my mom's approval on this decision? Is it because I feel unsure about it? Is it because I want to feel validated? Is it because I want to feel smart and I want her to acknowledge that I want to feel smart, right? Like kind of, and that's the scientist in me, right? And the scientist in all of us is just asking more questions before deciding to block or to like report a post or to like angry comment on something or to honk at someone, right? Is just kind of asking yourself more questions about you. And it's not that people sometimes do have bad intentions, right? People do have bad intentions. The reality is that most of us are hurt, right? Like most of us are not doing great in the stress regulation department, right? Which I think can give a lot of people compassion when they look at people reacting in certain ways. Like, okay, cool. So you have like 5% of your brain right now working. All right, I can see why that transpired.
So the validation of your mother for that decision and having those decisions constantly through the controlling of your external environment being the trigger, but it's actually not the trigger. It's you that's triggered from all these different things because you haven't fully healed or you haven't fully addressed that subject or that matter or that lack or that belief that might be a disbelief, kind of coming into like an avoidance of all these realities that you've just kind of masked and put aside.
And it's all, and thank you for saying that back to me, it's all an invitation. So that's kind of how I see us dealing with the world now, is that it's all an invitation to be way more rooted than we've ever been to feeling safe and secure within ourselves by whatever means necessary, and why it might look like seclusion would be the way to go, but really your brain doesn't change when you're by yourself. Which is when you're triggered, you notice it and you unpack it. And then that same thing could happen again and you feel completely different.
Because you've already unpacked it and you've seen what it is that it bothers you and you're able to see it for what it is instead of what you think it is, an attack on you.
And then you find ways to be able to give what you want to yourself. And then in that state, right, it's really hard for people to take away things from you. But that's stress regulation. And that's also a lot of, and they come hand in hand, emotional regulation, right? Stress changes our biology. Emotions are the same. Emotions are no different. They release chemicals. Our cells have receptors to trap them. if this happens over and over and over again, things are going to change at a physical level.
And neuropathy, digestive issues, Crohn's,
Yes.
issues with muscles and movement, frozen shoulder, sciatica, posture. And when we're having all these issues, we're not standing in our center, grounded in our feet, trying to find that pole that connects us from Mother Earth to Father Sky. We're just kind of random little pieces here and there, just floating in the air from our hand to our leg to our hip to, whatever is happening in our digestive system or how it's impacting that other brain of ours, which is directly in our heart.
Mm.
And I find it so sad because, I think I'm not quite sure, but I don't think we talk about what challenges us as much as what we would want from the world.
Mm.
I want to be successful at massage therapy, for example. And so I have to be part of this group and that group so that people can see me so that I could have more clients. And if I have that, then I'll be successful and happy rather than I want to be a successful massage therapist. What is it that determines that? The results my clients get, not only physical, but emotional and mental regulation and how they're able to embed themselves into, you know, taking on the task without being overwhelmed by changing something or by empowering themselves through somatic practices, through writing, reading, expression, through screaming, through whatever it may be, dancing. It doesn't matter, cooking. I don't care what you do. If it
Mhm.
serves your being and it makes you feel calmer in a state where you're actually able to process and synthesize what it is that is bothering you, like even cleaning. You don't necessarily like doing cleaning, but it's so necessary because it's in those mundane tasks of the everyday that we have those mini moments to process our thoughts and our emotions, which oftentimes people try to skip them.
Mm.
What's the quickest way of doing it? How about
Yeah.
I outsource it? How about somebody else writes this? How about and this outsourcing is taking our agency away from us, I
Mhm.
think. And so maybe doing that extra load of dishes in the dishwasher is not such a great idea. Maybe it would be good for you to actually wash your dishes because it gives you that space of repetitive motion,
Mhm.
repetitive movement for you to allow different part of your brain to come online. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, that can definitely be a thing where we do repetitive movements. Also bilateral stimulation, right? So that's where walking is really great, right? 'Cause bilateral movement, like you're in flow, but you have kind of like one limb and the other going side to side. That can definitely help with synchronizing both sides of your brain and having, like you say, right? Partially because of stress regulation, but also because of that synchronization, you can have thoughts almost kind of, for lack of a better word, like fall out of your brain to the front so you can acknowledge and process. Now, what I love about what you said was that all of this is meant to be empowering, right? So the way the world comes across today is very disempowering,
Mhm.
right? Like we're all quite reactive and like Sarah says, right, we're outsourcing a lot of things that we used to do ourselves or we used to have people to do it
Or in community. We
in
used to do it
community.
in community, and
Yeah.
now we're just, in our little tiny holes and doing it on our own, or these people that are in these beautiful, huge houses, but that live completely alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet we regulate best when we're in a relationship with others, right?
We
So that
definitely do.
co-regulation is not as prevalent, I think,
Yeah.
in our society right now,
Yeah.
especially since COVID.
Especially since COVID. Yeah. No, there's been really interesting studies around, and I say this till like the cows come home, right? Stress regulation is not selfish. If you regulate your stress, you regulate other people's stress around you through mirror neurons in your brain, right? That literally mimic by watching somebody else being relaxed, you can take on a more relaxed state. The tempo and sound of their voice can help lower your cortisol, and breathing rates can sync up with people. So having a breathing rate that gets you more in your parasympathetic can help others do the same. So it's literally the most empowering thing you can do, and the least selfish thing you can do is to prioritize your stress regulation.
And being self-full then,
Yes.
and not selfish.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And if we were to translate all of this into how do we deal with the instability and constant gnaw at our attention in our world, how does this translate to people that are listening out there? What does this mean for them in layman terms? Like, is it that stress regulation is the number one thing that they should be focused on? Is it about self-care and self-fullness? Is it about managing our environment so that we are surrounded by the right people so that we can actually address those things that come and trigger us? Is it about finding community or being more careful or caring in our society as a human?
I think that even the humans that come off really not caring underneath are very caring, and they're just very hurt and very probably far away from what their true self is. But it's a super good point, Sarah, because we did say a lot. And so I'm going to be selfish and not give one takeaway. I'm going to give three, but they're going to be three really simple steps or like simple statements. The first one with how do we deal with the world right now is stress regulation is your number one priority. Your safety and security comes from yourself. So that's kind of the big takeaway there. The second takeaway is neutrality in our world, in our stressors, in the thing that triggers us. So yes, it's very easy to see what's bad, but there is equal amounts of good. And that in itself is an uncomfortable exercise, but it helps us get out of our fear center so that we have more of our brain to deal with it. And that's the example of the trigger, right? Not necessarily being a bad thing, but it's showing you a really strong circuit that is still hanging out, firing every chance it gets. So we have one, stress regulation, top priority. Two, seeing the neutrality in all of these events and these triggers so you're not stuck in your fear center.
Are we writing those angry letters to the world?
We can write those angry letters to the world. We can also see the neutrality in what's happening in the world, which is a challenging exercise, but can be done and can help us get out of our fear center and our amygdala. That we can write down. I'll hold off on explaining it, but a simple T-chart with like a pro and con can go a long way.
It's neutrality, which is really hard to do, right?
It is very difficult to
Neutrality
do.
is so difficult to come to because we have everything around us that's telling us what to think, what to say, how to think, what to do, how to act, what to like, what to not like. You don't even know. You go to the pharmacy to get shampoo and like there's so many choices that unless you know what you like, you stand there for half an hour wondering what the heck am I supposed to want, right? So neutrality. Okay. What's important there, right? What is it? What are the facts? And how can I manage?
And the third thing would be paying attention to whenever we make something mean something about ourselves and using that as an invitation to dive deeper. So this is where we kind of talk about not having to control our environment, right? So that we're not kind of living in these siloed lives and we're isolated and we're also missing a lot of brain gains, right? Because we learn a lot through other people. We learn a lot through interacting with the world, and the world needs us and our gifts. Is anytime we feel any type of way emotionally, whether it's pure elation or lots of sadness or anger or feeling scared, what are you making it mean about yourself? Diving into that and seeing ways that you can give that to yourself already.
Love that. Do you have an example?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I could even tie it to the neutrality piece a little bit. I mean, it's always been a hot topic, but a really hot topic now is money, right? Like when I make X amount, then I'll feel safe. Yeah. And definitely with the way that things are going right now, I feel like this topic is at one of its peak kind of popularities right now. And so one way to look at money neutrally, right? Like let's say not having as much money as you'd like would be to be realistic about your situation, right? So, do you have food? Do you have an apartment? Do you have clothes, right? So kind of getting a bit of context of, what you do have. Another thing is also looking at, okay, well, what are the lessons that I'm learning and maybe not having as much money as I want, right? It's helping me prioritize what I find valuable. It's helping me get creative in finding other ways to make money. It's helping me be maybe more motivated in my business or getting new skills, right? That, I probably would be a bit complacent if I had all the money I wanted right now and probably wouldn't be putting myself out there for learning these skills. And another thing in the pro column, if you really are like one of those people, and I get it, that are like, I would feel incredible if I had blank amount right now. Are you making that mean something about yourself? Do you think having a certain amount of money means that you're valuable as a human? Does it mean that you have impact as a teacher, a coach, or whoever kind of profession you're in? Can you only feel like you're making an impact if you're making millions? And when you do that, so let's say it's impact that I'm concerned about. I really only want to make this amount of money because then I know that I've made an impact on the world with what I teach. Well, how can I look at the ways that I'm making impact right now, right? And go small. By using my own stress regulation tools, I'm able to go to a coffee shop and not be completely out of it or stressed or rude. And so the barista finally had like a good experience with the customer. That's how I made an impact, right? And so there's ways you can do this by just simply setting the intention at the start of your day to start noticing it. Or for people that love to write, I love to write this down, even taking screenshots of people that I've worked with or people that leave comments. And it's not so much that it's the volume of people. And I think that's where, the way the world is right now, they're kind of making you place conditions on yourself that what you're teaching is only worthwhile if you're making this amount of money, or what you're sharing is only worthwhile if you have this many views or this many followers. But that's a lie. That's a lie. That's a limitation. That's bullshit. And you can feel impactful and what you're doing is worthwhile while you're even just doing it for free. So that's kind of like one example of really unpacking if you're making something mean something about yourself and how you can begin to free up that brain space.
I love that. I really do.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Because, well, I've been busy in the past few years, not necessarily productive, but busy. I will call myself out on that. And something really major happened where my mom had a brain aneurysm, and it was her third, with less we being known to us. Like, we didn't know. And so that took us by surprise during our trip in Dominican Republic. And as we came back after the 7 days, we went straight to the hospital and stayed at the hospital for about 2 months. And then it was another 2 months of rehab at home with physiotherapists and ergotherapists, which really helped my mom. But then during that time, I left for a trip just to actually change environment and maybe come back more resourced. But instead, I just left and spent maybe 2 weeks in Florida doing nothing, like fuck all. And what happened is when I came back, I felt like, oh my God, where's my impact? What am I doing? I haven't worked in so long. And that's exactly how I came back to myself is, wait, you are making impact. All the people that I've connected to in the hospital, all the
Yep.
people that I helped while I was there, all the information and education to the nurses that are working in the palliative care department was just, that was an impact where I still see them on the street and we still say hello to each other. The impact of me understanding the value of life and how it's much more valuable living it than
Mm.
spending it online. And so that that kind of took me away even more from social media. So I still post every once in a while, but I used to think, oh, if I don't post, I'm such a failure and my business is going to go wrong. And it has nothing to do with that because I've never sought out social media for work. I've sought it out for sharing the good stuff in my life. And I'm not very good at sharing the bad stuff because, well, some of it is personal and I like to keep my life personal, not because I don't like to share my knowledge or my belief, but it just comes to show that I didn't need to have that validation from the outer world. That impact that I was creating little by little actually freed me from thinking that I had to have a bigger impact. I can have a bigger impact. I will. Everything in its own time. I've been traveling. I've been doing me during my travels, and a lot of people have gained from it, from knowledge to practices to healing old emotions and wounds. And I don't need to show it to the world for it to be impactful. It already was. It already has been. And it's in those interactions that I've created my success, the same way that success for me was about making and empowering clients to take their health in their own hands. And here they are working out every day as a couple, for the past year and changing their life. And they look 10 years younger, or stopping drinking after 40 years of drinking intensely, and just they stop drinking. And they've lost weight and they're exercising every day and they're doing more breath work than I am. They're the ones that come to me and say, hey, are you doing your breath work? Are you doing your practices? Because they've kind of surpassed the teacher for their own reality. And that for me is success.
Yeah.
So that impact that you have, you never know how deep it is until you separate yourself and your value from what you think it means for you.
Sure, yeah. And that's kind of what happens when we start placing conditions and making certain things mean about ourselves is we're not actually aware of the reality, right? Like we have this kind of lens, we have this circuit, right, that's really biasing our attention to something that we don't actually notice that it's already here. And so every time you do, like all those incredible examples you just gave, you're strengthening that circuit that's like your own inherent value, your own inherent impact, and your brain is going to continue to look for that and seek it out, and your entire world begins to change. And so with the state of news and social media, we're strengthening circuits we already have that are forcing us to pay attention to things that are not actually helping us. And so figuring out what are we making this mean about us and starting to shift in that way, we end up creating new circuits that end up creating a reality that's really different. And it's not that it's incredibly empowering, it's annoying. And this is not to have anybody beat themselves up about it. Again, it's all an invitation, but you can have two people experiencing the exact same thing and interpreting it in completely different ways, right? So that CEO that's like going up to the hotel, after his or her like 5-hour flight in beautiful business class. One of them kind of opens the door to this beautiful suite, drops off the bag, lies on the couch, looks at the view and is like, wow, how incredible is it that me, my company, we're here, we're doing this. I can't believe this is real. Whereas the other one who's experienced the exact same thing throws the bag like on the bed, opens up the laptop, is like, man, like the flight was late. Like I only have a couple hours to finish this work. Like I'm never going to get it all done. They're experiencing the exact same external reality, but their brain is interpreting it completely different. It's strengthening completely different circuits. And that's where the simple question of going, well, what am I making this mean about myself can truly change it all.
Change it all.
Change it all.
So how are we making all this struggle and challenge through the world? How can we allow it to impact us in a way where we grow more
Mm-hmm.
neutrality, more compassion, more understanding, more respect for other people's views and values without being so aggressive towards others that are not the same
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or that are gun ho and let's go get him and, being the very vocal activist and why are you not part of this and why
Yeah.
are you not doing this and you have to send this and you have to send that. Like,
Yeah.
how can we find a good balance in between the two?
Yeah. 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 Definitely neutrality is a good one. And it's not easy looking at the positive and negatives, the lessons, the obstacles, the things that are coming out of certain things happening. And also asking if you're in this category of why do you feel so threatened by people being so particular about their views. So seeing the neutrality in their views, right? So seeing how maybe there are some positives along with the negatives, and then thinking, why am I so threatened that they're out here saying this and getting lots of views and all that? Because again, if we have that safety and security within us, then there's no reason to be so threatened by other people sharing their views online. And really, it's also we're not in our power if we're letting that emotionally sway us. We lose a lot of our brain power. We become sicker because we're in a stressful state. And so that's what I think about a lot when people come online and say things that are ridiculously offensive and they're getting lots of views, with some people being for it and some people being against it. But the reality is that we're all entitled to this range of expression. But I don't have to get in my stress response. That's the part that's empowering.
And not getting into the stress response, is that partially not allowing our emotions to lead the way?
It's not allowing them to take over
Over.
and to regulate them. So because it's not, again, it's not this idea that we don't allow ourselves to have emotions, right? That's the whole kind of secluded person that controls their environment so that they don't have to regulate their stress because they never get stressed because nothing's happening in this vacuum. But seeing our emotions as an invitation to dig in and figure out your why underneath. Why did I feel this way listening to that? And then regulating yourself so that you can come to a more neutral place and make a decision. And the decision can be, yeah, I don't agree with that. And then you move on, you move on, right?
Move on.
You move on. Yeah. And you use all that brain power that we all have access to. Our brains are incredible to create the things that you desire and to focus on the impact that you want to make and the community you want to foster, the people you want to help, not this random content online that's making you angry.
Yeah. We started the conversation with earlier, before we even got onto the podcast. You said something about no, shouldn't, still, just. Can you tell me a little bit about these words and give me an example of some of these words that we all use? Never, always, still, just, shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't, can't. What do these words do to us? Find that that's very interconnected with staying neutral,
Yeah.
helping with conflict resolution and expression.
Yes.
So,
Yes. Very good, Sarah. So it's funny because Sarah was asking me, was just confirming kind of where I'm at my PhD. And I used the word still, that I'm still doing experiments. And then I quickly backtracked and was like, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't use shouldn't. And then I shouldn't be using still. And it's using language that is excessively negative, but not even excessively negative, but there's no flexibility, right? Shouldn't, still, just, never. They're very inflexible. They're not neutral in the sense that there's no wiggle room to see both sides. And so casually, I do this from time to time, reviewing the things that I'm saying out loud a lot, right? Because what I'm saying out loud, yeah, exactly, Sarah's nodding. What I'm saying out loud is stimulating my brain. And so changing it to remove those words, because honestly, there's nothing wrong with me doing experiments right now. Like, and the funny thing is that It's taken me quite a bit of work, but I'm quite at peace at where I'm at with my PhD. And in terms of the uncertainty that comes after my PhD, lots of work's being poured into that, lots of advancements being poured into that. And yet there's that invitation to look at my language from time to time because I've casually placed limitations in it, which we do all the time. But that's exactly why I'm glad you picked up on that. It's the idea that with those words, we're no longer neutral anymore. We're for a side. And if we're for a side, that'll often elicit a stress response in two ways. If we're excessively positive, we might be placing urgency on something because we really, really want it. And we think that it's going to mean something about us, that something's going to change, something's going to be fixed. But because we don't have it yet, it's urgent. And so we're stressed about something really exciting. Maybe it's like a fun job offer, maybe it's a new client potential, whatever. And then the negative one's a bit more obvious, where we feel like we're under threat or under attack or we're missing something. And so language, it's super interesting, can get us into those two camps, which all lead to the stress response.
And the not enoughness and needing to do more and keeping busy versus being efficient and productive and so on. And being able to be uncomfortable with uncertainty.
Yeah, uncomfortable with uncertainty. Yeah, that's a big one.
That's where we're going.
Yes, more and more every day. And if our emotions are running high and we're not prioritizing our stress regulation, then we become very easily manipulated, right? Because, like, again, our brains are not online. We're sick from our own biology, basically. So, yeah, it becomes more and more imperative that we become the source of our stress relief.
From our words to our writing to our expression to moving our bodies, which is so impactful in regulating all those hormones and all those yummy juices that flow through. I know muscles have the capacity of changing the way the brain and the regulation and the function of organs help us in coming to this neutrality. So get out there, get moving, get walking, allow yourself to do the extra set of dishes, allow yourself to catch yourself in your words. And maybe some somatic exercises. You could find them online. You could do a few deep breaths. Actually, you should do a few deep breaths. I'm going to go into that. I shouldn't, but and as we're closing up, two more things. What are your three favorite breath works that are really easy to do and that are really powerful for you?
The first one is for when we're in that fast stress response, the panic, is called the physiological sigh. Yes, and that's 2 inhales back to back through your nose and 1 long exhale out the mouth. And so I'll do one as an example. I'd inhale 1, inhale 2, exhale out the mouth. Perfect. So that's a great one for when you're in a panic state. You can do a couple of those back to back and kind of regain, again, that access to your brain and then respond to whatever situation you need to deal with. Another one that I do that you can do literally walking and nobody will notice that you're doing it would be the Ujjayi pranayama, known as yogic breath. And so that's a little constriction at the back of your throat so that you're stimulating your vagus nerve, which I won't get into too deeply, but you're basically pacing it. And by having that gentle squeeze, you're stimulating it so you can get into a parasympathetic state. So for the first couple, you can do it out the mouth on your exhale so you can hear it. So Sarah and I will do it together. We'll inhale through our nose, exhale Ujjayi. Good. And then the next couple, you can do with your mouth closed and basically turn down the volume so that the constriction's more subtle, but you can still hear it. And that's a great one that I can do walking, that I'm doing when I'm on the metro, in the line of a coffee shop. Nobody knows that you're doing it. And then the last one I love that I do at home, it's a bit harder to sneak in, is Brahmari breath, bumblebee breath. So good. And that's amazing because I do this a lot. We've done it together in child's pose, because in child's pose, you start with your hands on your shoulders, knees under your hips, and then you bring your hips all the way back, arms forward, and your chest is kind of on your thighs, and then your head's on the floor or a block or something. So visually, you're reducing stimulation, which is great. And you kind of create an own cocoon for yourself. And you inhale through the nose, exhale out the nose, but you create a hum. And so Sarah and I will do one together. We'll inhale through the nose, exhale Brahmari. Stunning. Yeah. That's so wonderful. And so this is great because you're creating a vibration. So you actually vibrate nitrogen oxide in your sinuses, which is yes, Sarah's dancing. It's a vasodilator. So your blood vessels have more space. You can take up more oxygen. And then you're also extending your exhale in a really big way, which gets you into a more parasympathetic state. And so for this, I usually do it. And Sarah, I'll give you all my links because I have these all recorded on YouTube. I'll do this maybe 3 to 5 times back to back, and then I'll do kind of like 5 normal breaths, and then I'll do that whole cycle 3 or 5 times. And it's a really nice reset. A bit harder to do walking around at the coffee shop, but definitely has to make my top 3.
I love that. And I like the Brahmari when I close my ear flaps as well, because then the vibration is kind of just transferring even deeper and wider. And I feel my whole skull shaking, which is so magnificent because it comes and shifts, gives a little more space to the what in between the bones of the head, which are connected through the sutures of our skull. And not only that, but it also helps that vibration of our throat, our vagus nerve, our expression, and just helps with the digestion, calms you down, just feels all around good. So I love that. May I ask you about one more?
Yeah.
What is it about the 5 second, 5 breath in a minute? So, or in 5 minutes. So that's the heart coherence, if not mistaken. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes.
Because I think that's really a powerful one that a lot of people can use on a daily basis. And it doesn't take much time or effort or space. It's just putting a timer on and counting your breaths, right?
Yep, absolutely. Amazing. That, if you gave me, I'm so glad you did. If you gave me 4, that would have come in a number 4. And that one is in line with the Ujjayi in terms of being able to implement it anywhere, anytime. Nobody knows you're doing it. So heart coherence, box breathing, resonance breathing is this kind of 5 to 6 second inhale, 5 to 6 second exhale. And the idea is that you're actually doing 5 to 6 cycles of these in a minute is how it works out. And it's been shown to help a lot with heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is a measure of stress because when we have noradrenaline in particular, there's receptors on our heart. So our heart will beat faster usually. We're trying to pump more blood. We're trying to pump more blood because we're in our fast stress response. We want to give energy to our muscles, to run, to freeze, to hide, whatever it may be. And when we're in parasympathetic state, our heart can beat slower.
Rest and digest.
Exactly. And so when we don't have a lot of variability, what it usually means is that we're in a stress state more often and that our heart is beating faster more. And so there have been a lot of studies with resonance breathing in particular that it helps increase heart variability, which just means that people are able to experience that lower heartbeat more often as a result of engaging with this breath.
I love that. If you want more information about all this and more about your brain, learning about your brain, learning about how it works, and maybe tools to regulate stress, regulate change and transition, you are welcome to go on Spotify or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Sylvie has a great podcast, and she's even got video. So you get to see her beautiful face, and it's Building Your Best Brain. I will put the link below, and you're more than welcome to go follow her, even on social media, which we will have her handles down below in the comment section. What is your handle?
It's synaptic.sylvie.
SYNAPTIC TIC.SYLVIE. I would strongly suggest you go follow her. She's going to be the next Andrew Huberman here.
With a little more hair.
And just
Sweet.
gorgeous, gorgeous all around, inside and out. Thank you so much for coming. I usually ask everyone to give us 3 things that they would give advice to others that they'd like to share. If you have 3 things that you would advise people to help them deal with today's world.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
nice, quick takeaways. What would it be, in your professional opinion?
For sure. Stress regulation is not selfish. Filling yourself up first fills up everyone. It's not what you do that's special. It's how you do it in your unique way, in your unique voice, in your unique gifts. That's special.
Beautiful. And the last person that came online for a podcast, I always ask one last question. What is the next question that you want to ask? And so they asked,
Oh my gosh.
what is it that inspires you?
Oh, what a sweet question. Is it that inspires me? Wasn't expecting this answer. How resilient humans are really inspires me. We're talking about humanity. The resilience that humans have, inspiring. Definitely inspires me.
And we don't get to that resilience unless we actually experience the challenge. So
For sure.
that's a really important part. You don't get to the resilience unless you experience the challenge. And it's not about the challenge, it's about you managing and learning how to get in, live it, experience it, and get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is a pro column to any obstacle you're facing, is that it's a lesson to get you through the other side and build resilience.
Thank you so much for coming on. And thank you guys for taking a moment out of your day. And whether you're listening to this in 2 parts or all in one, thank you for taking the time, walking with us or cooking with us or washing your dishes, allowing space for your mind to clear and clean what is in there. I truly appreciate your support in leaving comments below and giving us a little bit about what inspired you, what you had as takeaways, and how we could serve you best in the next podcast or even in this one. If you have any other questions for her, please link them in the comments below wherever you're listening to this podcast. My name is Sarah. I'm here with Sylvie, and we thank you for coming on, tuning in, and staying on. Wishing you a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. May you stay blessed and stay human.